What is the role of tech in the Ukrainian war? This is what we're going to talk about today in this episode of This Week in Tech. When I started This Week in Tech, I wanted to have a space where I could tell people about all the most important things happening in tech. And I did that because I think that tech is impacting society a lot, and everybody needs to understand what is happening then. But with everything that is happening in Ukraine, I feel like all these things, the world of technology, suddenly seems just silly to talk about it. I mean, there's a war happening. Who cares about NFTs, right? So it just seems silly to me to talk about anything else that is not the Ukrainian war. But last week, I think something changed in the war. As different governments and the United Nations started to take a stronger stand in this war, so did tech companies. And I believe that technology and tech companies can play a huge part in this war. And I'm not the only one who believes that. The Ukrainian Minister for Digital Transformation said in a Twitter post that technology can be the best response to tanks, missiles, and rockets. So they are very aware of that, and Russia is very aware of the power of tech giants as well. In fact, 1 week before the war started, they sent an ultimatum to a bunch of tech giants telling them that they had until the end of February to start a Russian entity if they wanted to keep operating in Russia, which means that Apple, Google, TikTok, etc., they will have to create a company in Russia, exposing them potentially to being treated by the Russian government in whatever way the Russian government wanted to treat them. So potentially, sending people to jail, prosecuting them, a bunch of things that we really don't want to happen. So in this video, we're going to talk about 5 different aspects of the role of technology in the war. The first one is information. We know that fake news and misinformation is a huge weapon that the Russian government has used to spread its propaganda. So we'll talk about what tech giants are doing to try to stop them from using that. Then we're going to talk about more direct things that tech companies are doing, the more concrete impact that these companies can having. We're going to talk about crypto and how it's being used by both Russia and Ukraine. We're going to talk about the cyberwar that is happening in parallel to the one that is made of bullets. There are people fighting with bullets and people fighting with code. And last but not least, I want to talk about the role that people like me and you can have in this war by leveraging technology. That being said, let's get started. Let's talk about the information war. Every authoritarian regime uses the media to spread whatever narrative they want to spread about what's happening in the world and about what they're doing. And Putin is no exception. Just think about what happened in 2016 with the Donald Trump election. There's a lot of conversation about the potential Russian involvement in trying to spread fake news and steer the direction of the elections in the United States. Think about what they will do in this situation where they are attacking another country. So obviously, there's a lot at stake. And the Russian government is definitely gonna use this weapon of propaganda and fake news again. But tech companies this time seem to be very serious about trying to prevent that from happening. The first thing that YouTube, Google, and Meta, so Facebook and Instagram, did was preventing Russian-backed media organization from doing ads on their platform. But you can see by yourself how this was not enough, because even though they couldn't run ads anymore, they could still post whatever they wanted. They could run bots, they could spread this fake news, or they could just let people comment and share whatever they wanted to post. So the next step that all these companies did was to actually ban them from spreading whatever kind of news they wanted. So YouTube, Twitter, Meta, they all stopped these Russian-controlled media organizations from posting news and from publishing on their channels. Some companies went even further. That's the example of Meta, the company that we were all used to call Facebook until some months ago. Meta hired experts that understand deeply the situation in Ukraine and that can speak both Ukrainian and Russian. And they asked these people to read all this news that are being spread on the platforms and try to label them as fake or as true. Then they also leverage technology to make their job easier. One side is using AI to train algorithms based on the decisions of these people. So all these hand-flagged fake news are also fed into algorithms so that they can be faster in reacting and eventually block fake news from being spread even before they get published on the platform. The second thing that they've done is to use different UX changes to label pieces of news or media that are older than 2 weeks, let's say. So in the beginning of the war, this happened to me as well. You could see pictures of explosions and different things that seem to be from the war, but they were actually coming from movies or different conflicts that happened some time ago. And Facebook is starting to flag all these contents so that we are more aware if what we're seeing is true or not. All these different measures seem to be working. And we know that because the Russian government started retaliating against these tech companies. The first thing that they've done is that they asked Facebook to stop to do their fact-checking. I have no idea how they justified this. I guess they say that fact-checkers may be biased or something like this, but it's kind of a bizarre way of trying to stop Meta from preventing them to spread misinformation. Asking to stop fact-checking is kind of like, you really have to be brave to ask something like this, or maybe stupid. But the most important thing is that the main Russian telecommunication operator is starting to restrict social media apps. So that seems to be a way to directly hurt the tech companies, right? Because all these tech companies make money from Russian users as well. So by trying to restrict Russian people's access to social media, the Russian government thinks that they're gonna hurt these tech companies and that maybe they're gonna stop trying to prevent them from spreading misinformation, which is kind of a weird hope. But anyway, I think the most important thing is that what this tells us is that whatever the tech companies are doing, it's working. Think about this. Until now, the Russian government has really relied on social media to spread misinformation. So restricting social media means basically trying to take away the wrong weapon, which makes me think that that may be because that weapon is not working that well anymore. This actually gives me hope. It makes me think that social media companies have actually learned something. They're taking much more seriously their role in trying to have more truthful communication and reducing the spread of misinformation. How are tech companies directly supporting the war in Ukraine? Let's start with Meta, the company that we formerly called Facebook. Facebook has two tools embedded in the product that are being extremely helpful in this crisis. The first one is Facebook donations. Since the beginning of the war, more than $20 million have been donated using the Facebook platform to help Ukrainians that are struggling right now. And the second tool is Facebook groups. Right now, there are two huge groups, both in Poland and in Romania, that count around 500,000 people in total, that are all trying to coordinate themselves to offer shelter to Ukrainian refugees and also to collect the kind of goods that they may need, for instance, clothing or blankets, this kind of stuff that is really important in times like this. Also, Airbnb is stepping in. They decided to offer to 100,000 refugees from Ukraine a way to stay for free in some of the houses that are listed on their platform. We still have to see how they're going to cooperate with hosts, but there are good reasons to think that this is going to work. Today, more than 26,000 Afghani refugees are staying for free in houses in different places of the world thanks to Airbnb. So that worked with the Afghanistan crisis, and I believe that this is going to work as well in this case. So good job, Airbnb. Also, Elon Musk is helping Ukraine. One big problem that the country has is that they need to stay connected. They need to keep having internet connection to communicate with the external world and get information. And Russia obviously is trying to prevent them from doing that. They're doing that by trying to destroy some of the critical infrastructure that the country needs to keep staying on the internet. So Elon Musk with SpaceX has introduced on the market a product called Starlink. It's basically a dish that sends signals to satellites in space and then brings internet back on Earth. And this device was not active in Ukraine until recently. Then the Minister of Digital Transformation of Ukraine asked to Elon Musk on Twitter to provide support and send some Starlink to make sure that the country can stay connected to the internet. Elon Musk read the tweet and sent a bunch of these devices and enabled connection for these people. To be fair, I read about a bunch of other companies that are less known than SpaceX that did the same, but you know how Elon Musk is. He gets all the PR. Last case is a little bit of an exception, and that's about Patreon. Patreon is a subscription platform that allows people as well as non-profit organizations to raise money for whatever cause they care about. Now, there is a non-profit organization called the Come Back Alive Foundation that has used the platform since 2014 to try to raise money for the Ukrainians living in areas like Crimea. Well, now that they try to get some money to support the army, they need, supplies, they need food, they need all sort of stuff, Patreon locked their account. And that's because it's violating their terms of service, which state that you cannot use the platform to raise money for the military or for kind of violent initiatives. But in this case, there's a war. So if you need to fund the army that is underfunded and needs more supplies, well, I guess it may have made sense to make an exception for this case, right? But Patreon decided to stop the Come Back Alive Foundation, and so they had to start using something else. They start using crypto, which leads me to the third section of this video. How is crypto being used in the war in Ukraine? One of the main features of cryptocurrency is that it's decentralized. It's free. No government can control it, which means that it can be used by anybody. So both by Ukraine and by Russia for whatever purpose they want. Let's talk about how Russia is using it first. One of the strongest sanctions that were raised on Russia was to take some of the banks out from SWIFT, which is the communication platforms that banks use to send money to each other, basically. So by cutting Russia out from the SWIFT protocol, they basically left them out of the universal financial system. So the Russian economy will be on their knees if companies in Russia cannot neither receive nor send money to companies from all over the world. And potentially, Bitcoin could be a solution for them. They could try to use cryptocurrency to circumvent this system, allowing them to basically just not care about the sanctions. Now, this is probably not gonna happen, and that's because cryptocurrency is just not ready yet to handle the entire economical infrastructure of a major country like Russia. So I don't think they're gonna be able to use crypto to circumvent these regulations. But I think this raises some very important questions for the future. What happens if Bitcoin becomes the main currency used in the world in, let's say, 20 years? And in 20 years, there's a new war. Well, the fact that the financial system using fiat currency is regulated allowed us to raise these very tough sanctions on Russia. If Bitcoin becomes the main currency that we have, we simply don't have this weapon anymore. And so freedom and deregulation and decentralization comes at a price. I don't know yet what's the answer to this question, but I think that this war is going to raise a lot of questions for people that believe in the future of crypto. Let's talk about how Ukraine is using cryptocurrency. First of all, Ukraine was the country in Europe with the highest adoption of cryptocurrency and the fourth one in the world. So it's pretty far ahead when it comes to crypto. The main use that they had so far of cryptocurrency was to get funds from outside. And I want to tell you about one interesting fact. The Come Back Alive Foundation, which we talked about before, it's a foundation that raised money to support Ukrainians living in areas like Crimea. They had to start using crypto when they were cut out from Patreon. They raised $4 million using cryptocurrency, but $3 million came from one single donation, which is another example of this, I think, kind of worrying thing that we have in crypto today, that most of the wealth is concentrated in the wallets of very few people, the so-called whales. Let's see what is going to happen now. The Ukrainian government, as I said before, was already pretty sold in trying to use crypto in the country. I mean, their minister for digital transformation made video ads to tell companies to adopt Bitcoin. So if crypto is going to actually support them and help them in this war, I'm pretty sure that they're going to be pushing even further once the war is going to come to an end, which we hope it's going to be soon. Let's talk about the cyberwar. In parallel to the war that is fought with bullets and rockets, there's another war that is fought with code. Now, I am 100% sure that both Russia and Ukraine have armies of hackers that instead of going around and shoot people, they try to write code to hack each other. I mean, think about this. In 2022, most of our world is digitalized. Our water supplies, our energy supplies, they all run using code. And so if you're capable of hacking another country's critical infrastructure, I think you can make much more damage than with bullets and rockets. So it seems like Russia is fighting this war in a very traditional way. It's kind of like a boomer approach to war. I'm pretty sure that both countries are definitely trying to hack each other. What we know for sure, though, is that Anonymous is fighting in this war as well. Anonymous is a community of hackers that is pretty well known for taking very strong positions in conflicts like this. And since the beginning of the conflict, they clearly stated that they were in war with Russia. Since the beginning of the war, they managed to do some pretty effective things. The first thing that they started with was hacking Russian government websites. They hacked the main website of the Russian government, they hacked the website of the space agency, and so far and so forth. They moved on by hacking Russian state television. There are some pretty amazing videos of people in Russia that scroll through different channels, and each one of these channels was pushing the real news of what is happening in Ukraine, showing videos of soldiers, showing videos of dads that are saying goodbye to their daughters. This is pretty huge, but I honestly think that they did not manage to hack the entire Russian TV. I just don't see how technically they will be able to do that. What I am supposing is that they were able to hack maybe the TV that is streamed over the internet, maybe some other digital version of TV, but probably not the entire Russian TV television system. That would be, I don't think it's possible. Recently, it seems like they also managed to hack the Russian Ministry of Defense database and publish some of their databases on the internet that everybody is free to go and read. And the last objective that they have is to go after the personal data and the personal secrets of Russian oligarchs. I honestly think that this can be very powerful because Russian oligarchs have a lot of power. And if their secrets get exposed to the rest of the world, suddenly, I think that there's going to be a lot of pressure from them to Putin to put an end to this conflict. Let's see what other leaks we're going to see in the next few weeks. Let's talk about open source intelligence. I had no idea what that was until yesterday, basically, and I think it's super cool. Open source intelligence is when people like me and you can use open source data and tools to get the same kind of intelligence that governments usually get about each other and about the army and all sort of stuff. I'll tell you about two examples. One is from Jeffrey Lewis, an expert in open source intelligence, who claims to be the first one who saw the Russian invasion of Ukraine. He did that by leveraging two different tools. One was a tool that allowed him to see some satellite images where he could definitely see some tanks that were starting to pile up on some specific streets across the border. The second tool that he used is Google Maps. Vladimir Putin said that they were gonna do some military stuff in the region of Donbass, but then they invaded from somewhere else. And from the street that the Russian army used to invade Ukraine, Jeffrey Lewis was able to see that there was a traffic jam on Google Maps, which means that there was some new, weird, unusual activity. And I think that's super cool because the fact that you can see that there's an invasion from an army using a free tool like Google Maps, it's pretty insane. Now, how did that happen? Google Maps leverages Android phones and their GPS location to try to understand if there's any unusual pattern in the movement of people. Now, there may be two different ways that this played out. The first one is that Russian soldiers had Android phones and they were keeping them on and without any sort of security while they were invading Ukraine, which would be one of the dumbest things I've ever heard. So I hope for them that that's not the case. The second case will be that regular people were using Android phones and they couldn't pass through the street because, well, there was a military invasion happening. I don't know which one is the right case, but in both situations, it's pretty amazing that you can see something like that on Google Maps. Makes you really think about what crazy data Google owns. The second case of open source intelligence I want to talk about is from Jack Sweeney, a 19-year-old computer guy who some weeks ago became famous because he opened a Twitter account that tracked Elon Musk's jet. So aviation data is open. Everybody can go on some specific websites and see where some planes are. And that means that also Elon Musk's jet location is free. And so Jack Sweeney thought it was funny to track his jet. But now that there's a war happening, he's using the same techniques to track the jets of Russian oligarchs and exposing where they are. One crazy case is about the Russian oligarch Abramov, whose jet and helicopter has been seen in places like the Seychelles, the Bermuda Islands, Abu Dhabi, the Bahamas. So it seems like he's having a pretty good time while his country is invading their neighbors. I think this is so inspiring. The idea that people like me and you can have all this power to get information from outside and spread what is happening in the world to other people, it's amazing. It really speaks to how democratic technology is today. I want to close this video with some personal reflections. You see, when I started this channel, I did that with a very simple idea. I did that thinking that technology is super powerful and it's impacting all of our society. Well, now there's a major war happening. This is a defining moment in our history. It's something that is going to go down in the history books. And well, tech is actually having a strong impact. What I think it's something that we should think about is that all these tech companies are having a hugely positive impact in this war. They're helping defeat Russia, the aggressor, but they're also helping the people that are being hurt in this conflict. Now, I've been thinking about why are they doing this? And I think there are two different interpretations. I'll tell you first the cynic and sad one that I personally don't believe in. The cynic interpretation of this is that tech companies want to use this as a way to negotiate better once governments are going to try to regulate them. I mean, think about this. Facebook, Twitter, Google, they all been grilled in the past few years by the Congress in the United States and by the European Union because governments simply don't trust them. They are afraid of the power that they have. They don't think that they're doing good to the world population. And so, they're pissed at them. And so one interpretation for why they're taking such strong positions in this case is because when they're going to sit again at the negotiation table, they can tell governments, hey, I helped you in Ukraine. So now maybe you're going to be a little bit more gentle with me. You see, I'm good. I helped you. I helped everybody. So don't regulate me. Let me do whatever I've always been doing. I think this is probably true for a small part. I think this explains a little part of the story. For sure, they know that by being good, they're gonna get something in the future. But I wanna believe in the second interpretation of why they are doing all these things. I think that in every tech company, there are people like me and like you. Every company is made of humans. And all these humans believe in something. They believe in freedom. They believe in the value of democracy. And so they're taking a position in this case because they believe in these values, because they saw these values being threatened by an aggressor, and they decided to use their immense power to do something about it. I want to believe that all the fuck-ups that we've seen in tech in the past few years actually led to some real growth. It led to these people understanding the power and responsibility that they have and to use this power for good. Use this power to help other people when they're in need. I don't know if I'm just being too good or if I'm being romantic. I have no idea, but that's how I want to see this. I believe in the positive force of technology. And I think This is a case where technology can do a lot of good and is doing a lot of good. This is it for this week. If you found this video useful and interesting, please share it with your friends and help them understand the role of technology in this war. Also, please subscribe to this channel. Not only are you gonna help me keep going, but it's gonna help you stay up to date on technology. I hope that this war is gonna be over soon. In that case, I'm gonna keep doing my job and keep talking about NFTs and whatever is happening in tech. But if it doesn't, this is gonna be a place to monitor the role that technology is playing in this conflict. That being said, I hope I'm gonna see you next week. Ciao. Before I leave you, I want to tell you that I started my new community programs. In these community programs, you're going to get access not just to these videos, as well as all the research links that I had to read to know about this news, but you're also gonna get access to bi-weekly deep dives. These are 1.5 hour sessions that I do on Zoom, where people can come in, listen to me speaking for 45 minutes about the most important topics in tech. I usually take just one, really dissect into the most important things and explain it well for 45 minutes, and then we participate in a conversation when together we try to understand how this new technology or this new trend is going to impact society. I'm going to leave the link so you can check out more information and join it if you want.